Hey everyone, and welcome to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim.
Hey, glad to be here all the way from level 75.
Yes, Tim's internet's been acting up, so to make sure it's as stable as possible, no video from Tim on the video version of the show this episode, which has been a thing for a couple of weeks now. So there may be a little stretch of episodes here with no video on Tim, but you do get that wonderful picture of him and some kangaroos. So, so we talk about horror movies on this show. It's a horror movie podcast, and on this episode, we are looking at a recent release from Netflix, a foreign film called The Platform, which is an interesting concept. This is actually one of these ones where when I saw the trailer and it was kind of clear that we were going to do it in some fashion, I kind of went back and forth. I was like, should this be a Streams episode? Should this be an Ace episode? And honestly, having watched that, I'm still not entirely sure which one it belongs on more. I feel like the social commentary aspect of it feels very science fiction-y, and the setting's a little science fiction-y, but it does have a very horror-esque feeling to it and tone, and certainly has some horror visuals and moments, and is definitely not a cheery watch. So I don't know. I honestly don't know, but we're here. Me and Tim watched it, so we're going to talk about it. So this is a Spanish film, and of course the premise of this, we'll start spoiler free. We'll give you a warning before we get spoilers. The basic premise is that it is a prison of sorts where each level, right, there's a series of levels, and each level has two prisoners who are essentially cellmates. And the room is a square. Their beds are on either side of the square, and in the middle of the square there's a hole, because a platform, the titular platform, you might say, descends through each level. The idea being that it starts at the top level, level number 1, and then goes down. And the level, what's on the level? The level has the food for all of the prisoners. And the idea being that they each get a certain amount of time with it, and as it goes down level to level, there's less and less food left. So there's a lot of social commentary here. I think my first thought when I heard the premise, the trailer didn't look like it in terms of tone or by any means, but I definitely couldn't help but think of Snowpiercer a little bit, in terms of the class system and that kind of thing. Even though technically everyone is a prisoner of sorts, so it's not like it's the rich people up the top in this case, but definitely I got vibes of that kind of idea in here. But that is the general gist of the film. So as I always do, I will start off the discussion by asking Tim, in the broadest strokes possible, how did you feel about The Platform?
I enjoyed it. I thought, it's a very interesting premise. It does feel kind of like a very dystopian sci-fi premise with a lot of allegories to what's going on today. The movie, is about like 90 minutes, and it kept my attention the whole way through. But I do feel like, there's a few things here and there that kind of lost me, or that I might still have questions about. But overall, I still had an enjoyable experience with it.
Yeah, I quite liked it. I think it's one of these high concept movies where, like, sometimes it can fall flat, but I think this one did a pretty good job of being true to what its premise was, but also constantly sort of adding more to it and shaking it up as the movie went on. Just when like one sort of scenario was starting to feel like it might be a bit played out, it would completely change things up. In fact, the movie really neatly fits into 3 parts because of how it does shake things up each time. And each time it does, it sort of brings new ideas to the table, which make it very interesting. It's also hard not to even think a little bit about something like Cube. There's a couple of scenes elsewhere in the movie, but not a lot. The vast majority of it takes place only in these cells in this vertical block of rooms. And it does have that kind of Cube feeling where you never see anything else, so it feels very surreal. Does the real world even exist outside of this place? Like, you don't really get that feeling. You do see something a little bit, but not by much. And as far as deducing like where it belongs genre wise, it's definitely both horror and sci-fi. It doesn't actually imply that it's the future, and there's only one element of it that really feels like it actually is kind of like futuristic, and that's the fact that the platform itself has nothing sort of like moving it up or down. It just kind of seems to move on its own.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the only technological side of it that's science fictiony, but the concept and the feeling of it is definitely kind of, you know, verging on that territory. But you do have the horrific side of it. You have a lot of disgusting eating. You have a lot of disgusting other things. You know, we'll get to it. We'll get to it in the spoilers, but you know, I think there's a pretty good job of we start because the trailer made me think that we were going to be like jumping around the cells a lot more. And in actual fact, it doesn't really do that. It kind of sticks with a main character, Goreng, if I'm saying that remotely correctly. But he's our main character. He's in here voluntarily, bizarrely enough. He's volunteered to come in here for 6 months because he'll get a diploma out of it. They'll give him a college diploma, and he's here for 6 months. And one of the key details about the movie is that they do move cell. Every month they move to a new cell. They keep the same roommate, but they move to a new cell, and they get to experience, you know, different levels of the system. And you know, so the movie kind of also shakes things up that way, because it either gets much better or much worse depending on where they're going.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most interesting parts of it, because if you know, like the very obvious, you know, allegory to it is like you know, kind of like a critique on capitalism, where you have, you know, people up at the top that are taking more than their fair share, and you know, not leaving enough for, like, you know, for the people below them. But I think what kind of, you know, like you were saying, what sets it apart from something like Snowpiercer, where you very much have, you know, these very obvious, like, oh, these are the bad guys, these rich people. In this, though, like, it's constantly, I think it's like every month they change rooms, so it's kind of an interesting concept where it's like, yeah, the people you know, up top are assholes, but they could be at the bottom, you know, next month, or in the middle, or, you know, and you know, you can easily become the bad guy, you know, when you're, you know, like this idealist, you know, in the middle, like, hey, why can't everyone take their fair share? And then once you are at the top, you know, you can become this, like, well, hey, screw that, I'm up at the top now, who knows how long I'll be here. So it's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, the moving around definitely changes things up a little bit, because it kind of takes the message and adds a layer of depth to it, which kind of says that anyone can be corrupted by the power, or the you know, if you end up on top, that you can equally become the monster. That is definitely one of the most fascinating things the movie does. And the acceptance of, like, there's actually one of the earliest moments is like, you know, I think he suggests, like, the cellmate, Trimagasi, who's like this older man who kind of explains some of the rules to him and how this works. He actually accused him of being a communist early in the film, because he suggests, like, you know, why not just, you know, make sure there's enough food for people down below, you know, and sort of be civilly kind of spread it throughout. There's enough here for everyone. And he says, "What, are you a communist? That won't fly up top." And that line really stuck out to me as being like, well, that's a bit of a weird line. But, you know, in a movie made, you know, released in 2020, like, it's not, you know, capitalism versus communism isn't exactly a hot topic that it was once upon a time during the Cold War. It's not. We're not really in that debate in and of itself anymore. But I think the point of that is to kind of, like, almost point out this weird, like, almost demonization of, like, anything that's not capitalist, you know, in a capitalist society where everyone's like, what? Like, why would we do anything differently? We're out for ourselves. Like, totally. You know, you know, I got mine, so what do I care about those down below? And, you know, Trimagasi, it's a really weird name. He like, you know, he is openly hostile to the people down below. They don't really talk to people up above and below them, but they can speak to them if they want to, because there's that open hole in the middle of the rooms that they can sort of talk up and down to. And like, you know, he's hostile to the ones below, and then, like, he just kind of accepts that the people above are probably going to be equally crappy to him. He's like, no, they're above and they're below, and you're where we are, and that's just the way it is, and we have to accept that. So I mean, the movie's not subtle with
No.
its social commentary by any means, but I don't think it hurts it in this case because it's not a when you have a premise this kind of high concept as it is. Like
Mhm.
I think pulling any punches with what it's trying to say would just feel really like tone deaf to what the movie is. You know,
Yeah.
the movie is clearly saying something about a very specific thing, and there is some nuance to it. There's some nuance moments, especially the ending is a little bit more open to interpretation, I think.
Yeah.
But like the core ideas of what it's playing with is definitely in your face, and I think for me the movie works quite well because even if you're like not wanting to think about that stuff too much, it still works really well as kind of a like it sets up its rules. Here's the rules, and like characters ultimately try and make a statement by the end, and you kind of want them to succeed because you want to prove that humans can be better, that humans can be better than like what we're assumed of.
Yeah.
So
That kind of becomes like ends up becoming the whole point of the movie is like them trying to deliver this message that like no, we are um like better than this. That
yeah,
yeah.
for as bleak and as horrible as the movie kind of is in terms of like everything it's doing and how sort of like soul destroying the location and concept is, there is kind of an ultimate kind of hopeful like just a hope like, there's hope, right? There's hope for tomorrow that maybe we can get better. And so as bizarre as it sounds, I do think there's a kind of optimistic twist to this movie by the time
Oh,
you get to
totally.
the end, which maybe it isn't apparent early on in the film.
Yeah.
But and I think it needed. I think if this one didn't have that optimistic touch by the time it ended, it'd probably be a bit too just miserable, and it'd start to feel a little bit like this is kind of like torture porn, but with hunger instead.
Yeah. That's true.
So no, I like it. I actually, I would say I like it quite a bit. I don't think it's perfect, and I don't think it sticks out to me as like an all timer. But I can see myself watching this again, and I think it is tightly paced, and it does keep shaking its premise up and adding more layers to it. No pun intended. As it goes on, and yeah, so that's much like characters. So is there anything else I want to talk about? Before we go into spoilers, I mean, I think the cast is pretty good. I would say.
Yeah.
I think they do a good job of like whenever we do get a new roommate for them, like it always completely shakes things up in terms of like okay, it's a completely different dynamic, different type of person, but they're all kind of memorable in their own way for different reasons. They all have their own kind of thing. So I think that's really good. I will say one of the challenges of a movie like this is you've got this essentially the exact same room to look at the whole movie, and I think the direction does a good job of never feeling like it's stagnant. It always feels like engaging to look at, despite the fact that we have 4 grey walls. Like it's funny because we just did the news episode a minute ago, and I was talking about Killer Kate, and one of the things I didn't say in the news episode about that, and this kind of dates when we recorded this, but that movie is like so dull to look at, despite the fact that they have daylight, they have houses, they have outdoor locations, they have a variety of places, and somehow it feels so just like this looks like a made-for-TV soap opera kind of style of shooting. And I think this movie, in theory, should look miserable, and it does in some ways, but like intentionally so. It should, when you hear, oh, it's just a grey room with 4 walls, and they're just there the whole movie, like that sounds like it should be like just extremely bland to look at. I never really felt that. It always felt like it was using especially the height. Obviously it's a visual effect because there's no places as tall to shoot this, but whenever they look down the hole or look up, it always has that sense of scale. Despite the fact of how intimate each sort of block is on its own, and I guess what I'm trying to say here is that the direction was good, and the design of the place, well, it feels really simple. It does a really good job of like really giving the atmosphere of the scale of it, and also kind of the sense of isolation of it as well.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
There's probably more eloquent ways to say everything I just said, but you got the gist of it.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. Like, yeah, I think that is something that's might be like a worry of this film is like yeah, are you gonna get bored spending so much time here? But again, I think they do a really good job of keeping things interesting and keeping everything going. Like I really don't think I ever felt bored at any particular moment in the movie. And I think kind of like what you were saying, like it feels like maybe if there ever is an instance where they're kind of starting to shuffle their feet or something, again something comes up to um change it up in one way or another. That was pretty interesting.
Yeah, it is building on its premise. So many times we'll watch a movie, especially some of the direct to VOD movies that seem to be really guilty of it, where
Yeah.
they'll have a premise and then it'll feel like they don't really capitalize on the premise. They'll just sort of they'll kind of vaguely set it up. They'll do maybe one interesting thing at the end, but for the most part, it feels like they're kind of spinning their wheels because they only had one idea. This movie, it feels like every single 20-30 minutes is adding an extra idea on top of what the foundation they've already laid is. So it keeps kind of getting deeper and more interesting. Then by the ending, like we have like sort of moral sort of stances to take with it. We have different characters and what they've represented throughout the film. Like it keeps changing things up, despite the fact that it doesn't sound like a movie that could change things up. It does it in really simple ways, and that's good writing. I think it's good writing that when they were writing the script for this, they knew that the characters have to be what's interesting. The characters have to be engaging. The characters have to really kind of take each idea and present it in a way where they're the sole conduits for making the movie interesting, because everything else is going to stay the same. So we have to do it that way. And that I mean, when I talk about bottle movies and why I love good bottle movies, because good bottle movies, they rely so hard on the writing being good, and it forces some writers and filmmakers to really like just like almost do like a triumphant like dance with words, because it's all they have to rely on. So it becomes almost like I don't know, the like master kung fu version of movie dialogue, where it has to be pinpoint, it has to tell the story, and it has to be all these things. And again, not that there's no visuals, not that there's no other things, but it restricts a lot of that by setting it in one location. So it forces creativity in a way that I really appreciate. And obviously, you get a lot of cheap movies who think they can do that and then don't, and it's really like soul crushing having to sit through it. But
And I'm sorry too. Did you mention that each person is allowed to bring one thing in with them?
Oh, I haven't mentioned that yet. I hadn't mentioned that. Yeah.
Which and it's another cool like little wrinkle to kind of keep things interesting, like especially when you start to explore more people, and then it's kind of like a good way to sometimes you get something that's kind of funny, and then sometimes you get something that can be kind of dangerous, and again just like a nice little. I like that it's not like too complicated, but it just adds like a little something extra to keep things a little interesting.
Yeah, it's a good little character thing. Because pardon me, it's because you get to like learn a little bit about each character based on what they have with them, what they chose to bring in. But it has that effect of it reminded me a little bit of something like Battle Royale. You know how in Battle Royale they all get like one weapon, and I'm like, obviously they don't pick that in that movie, but the idea they each have one thing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Goring brings a book in with him. Don
Quixote.
Quixote, thank you. I had no idea to pronounce that the last name. So yeah, Don Quixote. So he brings that in with him, and of course, his first cellmate brings in a giant knife. The Samurai Plus, which is a whole backstory behind it, which I'll get into in spoilers. But so yeah, that's another facet that kind of tells you about and it sets up this like sort of engaging ongoing idea that there's a character who they introduce relatively early on who actually rides the platform up and down because she's searching for someone, and she's kind of mysterious, and it's kind of this weird thing, and that itself introduces a whole lot of elements into the film, and she ends up becoming a really fascinating character, and what she kind of does for the main character and how she progresses a lot of ideas. Really, really good. So I think we'll get a spoiler warning, and we can dive into it a little bit more. So I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month of Alison Fordyce, Cindy Palacios, Tyler Hess, and David Sharp. You can be a Patreon producer, of course, at the $20 tier above on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. But you don't have to be a patron at that tier, of course you don't. You can support everything we do for as little as $1 per month, and for that $1, you'll get a bonus exclusive episode every month that streams after midnight. And there's a back catalogue now of about 16 episodes, I want to say, that you can go and get access to. You'll get bonus episodes of other shows as well. At the $5 tier, you also get voting rights once per month. And of course, you get all the episodes of the movie review episodes a day early. So, well worth having a look and see if you're interested in keeping all the content coming. But we do appreciate everyone who does. But anyway, so full spoilers then for The Platform. So, the movie opens actually with like what looks like a kitchen in like an expensive restaurant with like a really sort of posh looking like manager like monitoring the kitchen staff as they prepare food. Thoughts? Did you think that was interesting? I don't know.
Not really. I mean, I think it's hard to kind of find it that interesting without context for the rest of the movie.
Well, I guess because I'd seen the trailer, like I knew what the premise of the movie was. So for me, it was kind of like, okay, this is a nice little irony here that they're treating this like fine dining. And I mean, even the food on the platform, when you see it at the earlier levels, when we get a chance to, it is set up like a fancy, rich table of food. Like, everything's really nicely displayed. It's very, like lots of fruit, lots of desserts and things like that.
And it's all from like when people go into this place, they get to like kind of pick like one dish, or they say what like their favorite dish is. So yeah, like it's kind of interesting. Like if a lot of people say like, oh yeah, I like this fancy thing or whatever, and then at the end of the day, it kind of all becomes this like giant mess. Like people are eating this kind of like very fancy, nice looking cuisine, but they're just grabbing it with their hands and just kind of throwing as much as they can in their mouth.
Yeah, they're just grabbing what they can. Again, that capitalist kind of like symbolism there. Because the first time you see, because it starts off, the movie starts off with going on. I can't remember the exact number, but it was like the 40s. It was something in the 40s.
It was like was it 48 or something like that? 47 maybe.
And by the time the platform gets to them, like when the older guy starts like eating the stuff, like it's stuff that's already been picked at. He's eating like chicken drumsticks that have already been bitten into, and it's like, oh, this is kind of disgusting. Like, what?
Yeah,
no, like, that's tough.
The one thing I'm kind of like a little confused about is like, did he know exactly what this place was going in? Because like when he wakes up, he seems very surprised by everything and feels like he needs everything explained to him by his cellmate.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like he knew exactly what was going on. I mean, even the person who worked for recruiting people to go here didn't seem to know the extent of what was going. Like she knew kind of more than he did, certainly. But it doesn't seem like he doesn't know about the platform. He doesn't know about how they're fed or how like they change rooms or anything like that. The only thing he kind of knew is he was going to some place called the Hole. I guess it was billed to him as a social experiment. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess maybe once we get to the end, we can kind of try to piece together maybe some ideas or whatever, because I think that's the and I don't necessarily want to say like a negative, but I guess maybe like the biggest question on my mind is kind of a lot of what this thing is and why are they doing it and everything. But the movie is fun enough though that it doesn't really take away from the enjoyment. I think it's something where it is kind of fun to have a takeaway to think about,
It's one of these ones, much like Cube, it's kind of, for me, like, it's okay if there isn't like an outside world. It's okay if it kind of exists on like, it almost feels like it could be like a feature-length episode of The Twilight Zone.
Oh,
like,
sure.
I could definitely see it being kind of like that, where it doesn't have to be explained in the context of the world. It just has to exist on its own for its own story. But yeah, so that's first chunk of the movie. He's with the old guy, Trimagasi, who, like, he has this sort of thing. He always says obviously. Like, whenever like someone, like whenever I say someone, whenever Gorian asks him a question, and he sort of gives him part of an answer, and then he like finishes it. He says obviously, like it's kind of his thing.
Yeah.
But he's he's like, oh, you have to eat. And the first couple of days, like Gorian doesn't eat. He doesn't want to eat off this table because it's disgusting. Like, people have been eating at it. This is 40 something floors of like leftovers, by the time it gets to them, and the old guy's like, "That's not a bad floor to be at. You know, it could be much worse. You know, I've been lower."
Yeah.
And he mentions how he was down at like floor 130 or something like that before, the old guy, at some one point. And a lot of the rules of the movie he explains the because one of the things that Goring kind of figures out based on what he says is that, oh wait, we're going to stay together, right? We don't get new roommates every month. We stay in pairs. And yet you got a new roommate, so what happened to the old one? Like, because one of the things that he's worried about is that you survived on floor like 130 when there's presumably nothing left on the table by the time he gets there. Like he starts to suspect that he killed his roommate and ate him to survive. And cannibalism is certainly something we're going to be bringing up.
Sure.
During the course of this, like, why wouldn't it be? Yeah, do you know what I kind of liked about this is this first part was very much the breaking of Goring's spirits in a number of different ways. But it also set up largely what type of character he was, and that he does have, you know, morals. He does have a sense of right and wrong. Primarily when we're introduced to Miharu, the woman who's riding the platform down. You know, the platform comes down. She's just sort of sitting in the middle of it, and he's, you know, Goring's kind of confused. He's like, "Wait, who is this?" And the old man explains that, oh no, she's looking for her child, that she's lost. It's somewhere in here, and he tries to sort of like reach out to her and tries to like communicate with her, and she just stays sitting there, and then the platform goes down. And when it reaches the floor below them, we actually see her, like the two guys in this floor basically see a woman and get like excited and grab her to try and rape her. And Goring is like yelling for help, and, you know, yelling, people come, you know, come help us, stop this. And he's actually tempted to jump down to try and help her. He's tempted to jump to save her. And we actually eventually see she doesn't need the saving. She actually crawls back to the platform, and she's like murdered the two guys. Like, she stabbed them with like a piece of glass. And it's kind of this really dark moment. But so it does a bunch of different things. It sort of shows what sort of person he is. This is really testing, like, you know, like how he feels about things. It also sets her up as a character, of course, as a really mysterious kind of like, because she's very silent. She doesn't speak anything in the entire movie. She's quiet the entire time. But the other break of the spirits here is that, you know, there's a couple of moments where he kind of does decide to eventually start eating off the platform, and even then he's still not quite broken. But when he does actually kind of break and decides to like, because the old man wants him to read to him, you know, from his book, because he misses his TV, and we'll talk about his story that he tells in a minute. But he like, once he does break, there's this montage of them essentially being best friends for the rest of the month, where they're doing exercises naked together, which was a bit weird, but whatever. They're, you know, it was like a happy like montage that you almost get in like a comedy, where like people are just bonding, and like, you know, they're doing their morning routine, they're doing this together, they're whatever, right? It was just really happy-go-lucky song.
I thought they were basically gonna be, you know, like the main characters for the whole movie, that which like why it's like, you know, really surprising when they wake up on the next floor.
Yeah, because they wake up on the next floor, they're at like 120 or something like that.
Yeah.
And Goring wakes up, and the old man's like tied him to his bed. He's got him bound and gagged. He's like, yeah, there's going to be no food on the platform, so I'm going to basically cut strips of you off and eat you. But I'll give you some too. We have to do this to survive. That's basically what it is, and I can't kill you because you'll just rot too quickly. So like, I need you to you know, last all month. And
because he's close to getting out.
Yeah, the old man's got 1 month left, I think he said. So yeah, I very interesting, because I was getting like the cake is a lie thing the whole time. I was like, did they actually get let out of here? Like, you know, do they?
I mean, it's one of those things kind of hard to tell, because I'm still not exactly sure what here is. You know?
Yeah. Part of me doesn't believe that anyone's actually allowed to go. That they're just like, maybe they take them out of the hole, but they just shoot them as soon as they get outside, so they can't tell anyone what this was.
Yeah, or you know, if it is supposed to be like one big social experiment, then they might be, you know, this might just be another aspect of it, where like, oh, how do people react when you tell them that they are, you know, are going to be free soon or something?
Yeah. definitely. So, but of course, what saves him is actually Miharu, who they set up, and they set up the idea that she might want to help him. Because Goring wanted to help her, and very nearly did. And so when she comes down the platform, as the old man's starting to cut into him, she actually saves Goring and kills the old man. Or at least, well, she doesn't outright kill him. She stabs him once. And then Goring grabs his knife and stabs him repeatedly, which is, I suppose we should talk about the Samurai Plus at this juncture. He tells this story about why he ended up here, because for the old man, this was a prison sentence, essentially. He was given the choice between this and lots of therapy, but he threw his TV out the window and it hit someone in the head and killed them. And the reason why he did this is because he was watching TV and an ad came on. It was the shopping channel or whatever. And an ad for the samurai knife came on. And it was this knife that once you sharpen it would cut through brick, and it would be this really great knife. So he ordered it. And then in the next commercial break, there was another ad for basically a better version of the same knife called the Samurai Plus, which was the same, except instead of having to sharpen it, it sharpened itself when you used it on anything. And this upset him so much that he threw his TV out the window. He bought the Samurai Plus though. That's the one that he brought in with him. But so it's a really quirky little story.
It's funny though. I mean, how many times does that happen when I know especially for me, I feel like every time I break down and buy some movie that I've been wanting to get for a while, a month later they'll announce hey, special edition coming soon or something, and I'm just God damn it.
That's true. That does happen quite a bit. Yeah, I've not double dipped in many though. There's only a select few that I will willing to double dip on.
Yeah, I have to really like it if it's something. I mean, it was a little better before when I lived near this big store that you could sell stuff back at. So I'd be all right, well, I'll sell this back, get a couple of bucks, and then get the nice one. But yeah, it's a little more annoying to do that, and I don't really live near anywhere.
Yeah. So yeah, but so this is kind of this big dark ending where he lives this on his second month of his 6-month sentence. Goring lives off eating the old man. And Miharu stays with him, and they actually end up having a sex scene. It's just, I mean, it's not overly erotic. You see, bits and pieces, but it's more of a sort of kind of dreamlike scene. But they have kind of bonded, and they're eating this guy's flesh together and surviving, and it oddly feels in tone with the movie though. I don't think it ever felt like it was doing something weird for the sake of being weird.
Yeah.
So on the start of his 3rd month, he wakes up and he's up higher again. He's not in a ridiculous floor, and he's got this new roommate who is a woman who was actually the woman who worked for the administration who put him here. She interviewed him when he was getting all his questions done, and she actually we find out later the reason why she volunteers because she's got cancer and she's dying. But she wanted to try and help because apparently, as far as she understands it, the point of this place is to prove that a spontaneous example of solidarity will evolve because of the harsh conditions. And that's kind of what they're trying to prove. Which is, I guess, a noble goal, but this is a really, inhumane way of doing it.
Yeah.
And, basically her plan is that she tries to make, 2 portions for the floor below her on these little plates. And it's she says, okay, I'm going to try and convince them to do the same for the floor below. But every day she tries to do this, and every day the 2 guys below basically tell her to piss off. No, we'll eat what we want. They'll be greedy, and they're not going to listen to her. And yeah, and also her object that she brought was her dog, which for the record, I immediately went, oh god, someone's eating that dog.
Yeah. I did not like this.
Yeah, it was coming. I mean, it happened in a kind of unexpected way though, which I kind of liked. It wasn't the most obvious because I really thought the dog was going to end up on the platform, and she was going to have to watch it be grabbed at, on the floor below.
Yeah, I mean, I say that's really messed up though, because if you're a dog owner and you love this dog and you're going into this thing where you might not make it out alive, or
Mm-hmm.
even if you are very optimistic, there's still like plenty of chances for harm to come to that dog. Like it could just get up in the middle of the night, go to the edge, and slip off. Like I don't know. I think it's irresponsible to bring that in.
Yeah, well, and eventually there's this great moment where Goring kind of yells down to the people below because he's almost like sick of like this pleading going nowhere, and he basically says, "Look, you guys do as she says, make the 2 portions for the people below, and just eat those 2 portions she made for you. And if you don't, I'll start shitting all over the table before it gets to you, and I'll make sure that almost none of it's untouched." And this convinces them, and she's like, I wanted to inspire them and convince them to do the right thing. And he's like, yeah, they're convinced. It's this idea that they have to threaten them with something to make them do the right thing. And, that brings in just, human ideas of, the idea that we have to have law, for example. We have to have punishment so people won't do certain things. And that sort of idea. But, like, and I thought that was a really interesting point where it's really kind of challenging. And this is kind of what I meant when I said that every time it changes, essentially when it changes cellmate, it introduces a new idea. And even before that, when they wake up in floor 120, and all of a sudden the guy that he's befriended, and it felt like they were becoming kind of this weird like brotherly love kind of thing. It turned into, no, the guy's going to eat him now. But when this woman's introduced, when Imagery, her name is, when she's introduced, she introduces the ideas of trying to make this work. She introduces the idea of wanting to actually prove that we can actually help each other and make all this happen. And obviously you have the contrast of, like, because on his first day, Goring, to his credit, did kind of say, why can't we, like, make this work? But she comes in with all these noble ideas of trying to, like, convince them. And but at this point, Goring's, like, been broken down, and he's at this point he's helped kill a man and ate human flesh. Like, he is so, he's already way past the finish line in his 3rd month, right?
Yeah.
And once again, when they wake up in the 4th month and he's still with her, she actually commits suicide because they're on like an even lower floor. Like they're on like floor 170 something like that.
Yeah.
Or was it 202? Did they go to 202 for this one? It might have been.
Yeah, and I think at some point I think maybe it was like the old man or something, or maybe it was her that says, "Oh, there's only 200 levels."
Yes, it was her. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they wake up and it's like, "Oh shit, there's more."
Yeah, there's more. And this basically robs her of all of her hope, and she commits suicide. And she actually essentially leaves a note saying, most people jump off, and that's one of the things that happens. I actually loved that moment earlier on in the film when he's still with the old man. At one point, a random body just falls and like hits the edge of the hole, and the blood spatters onto Goring's face. Like, I loved that moment. That was a really well done moment.
I think it's pretty early on too.
Yeah, it is. It's just really sell how just desperate this place is.
Yeah.
But she hung herself instead of jumping like most people do to kill themselves because she wanted to be there for him to eat. Like she gave him that as an option, and so he has this delirious month of like because we should mention as well that he kind of sees like the old man pops up to talk to him every so often. Not a literal ghost, of course, but just in his head, like he sees the old man like talking to him about what he should do and whatever.
Yeah.
And that's I mean that stuff's fine. They don't overdo it, which I appreciate. Like they established the idea. They did it a second time and they did it again at the end. Rule of threes, basically, to put it that way. But again, we keep shaking things up. When he wakes up again, and he has this new roommate, Baharat, on month 5, because I was keeping track of the months here, just to like, okay, so how close is he? Like to the end. He's only got 1 month after this, and they're on floor 6. So not only are we shaking things up that way, because obviously, okay, now the food's barely been touched by the time it gets to him. Because we should mention, like, the time they have to actually eat the food is like 2 minutes, if that. Yeah. They don't get a lot of time. It's just a very quick little spurt.
And you're not allowed to hold on to anything. Like you can't like grab food and store it, because then otherwise they'll either raise the temperature to like sweat you out or lower it to freeze you.
Yeah. very quickly as well. So you just immediately because the first time that comes, he takes an apple and he's like, I'll keep this for later, and then immediately it's like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but Baharat has got a rope. Like that's the thing he brought with him seemingly, and he's yelling up to the people above. So there's actually a couple. I don't know if they came in as a couple necessarily, but there's like a man and a woman.
Yeah.
In the floor above, and by the way, I glossed over the fact that Miharu, who ended up on the floor with with him and the woman again, on 1-3. What the first thing that actually breaks Imagery's spirit is that it's Miharu who actually eats her dog, in the middle of the night, and because Miharu shows up and she's kind of injured from the previous floor, so she comes here and like Goring's like sort of taking care of her, and then she eats the dog in the middle of the night, and so this is kind of the first big thing that really breaks her spirit that this is not possible.
Which like I thought that was like messed up though, because it's like you really can't wait like one day for like the food to come. Like I'm sure she's been through a lot, but yeah, can't you just wait at least a little bit and get like a little bit of food instead of killing the dog? But
I mean, I get it. I mean, they're at the point where she's already. I mean, presumably she's eaten people multiple times. Like I get that at this point the idea there's a dog there is just kind of like, no, that's like it's a convenient meal in this place. Versus normal. It tells you how desperate they are. They shouldn't even think about it twice. You just did it. But what's interesting though is that we get some like contradicting information from Imagery about this, because she says that no, I know who this woman is. She's not got a kid here. Like no one under 16 is allowed in here, and she wanted to be an actress and she's only been here for a year, and everything you've heard is a lie. But and I actually did think when the old man was telling him all this, like she's looking for a kid and like the kid's in here somewhere and she's looking floor to floor. I was thinking, like, but how did you know this? Because she doesn't speak. Like,
that's true. Yeah.
Is this just rumors that have like passed around, like floor to floor or roommate to roommate or whatever? I don't know, but
I think the way I took it is, at one point she was probably like this, bright-eyed, optimistic person who's probably going like floor to floor asking people for help and trying to rely on the kindness of strangers, and then she's probably just been through so much shit and like broken down, and that now she's probably just like this husk of a person that is just more like a legend or something.
Yeah, I can see that. So anyway, we're at Baharat and he's got a rope and he's yelling at people up, hey, if you hold out the rope and he'll let me climb, I can get out of here, and we can get everyone else out, and he's very hopeful, he's got his high spirits, and they're on floor 6. So again, we're shaking things up again, but giving him a completely different roommate who has a completely different idea. And the guy, Baharat, like he climbs up the rope. The couple above agree to help him with the rope, and when he gets almost to their floor, he's got his hand out reaching to be pulled up. The woman just sort of leans her ass over, but she's got like her trousers pulled down, and she shits on his face. We see shit hit this man's face. And it's worth mentioning, like, a lot of the characters in this, and not Goring, but everyone else who talks about Baharat keeps referring to him as the black man, because that so even though the movie doesn't necessarily go deep into the idea of racism, it definitely seems to be something that's added into the idea of the social class commentary, where so many characters just refer to him as the black guy and like not his name or anything else. So that definitely stuck out to me.
Oh sure.
But but then this is kind of where like Miharu, like thinking about the lessons from the previous character and then sort of looking at the hope on Baharat's face, like he gets this idea where like what if they go on the platform, ride it down, and essentially like police the platform and force people to not take more than what they need so that the food can get to the bottom and prove that there's enough for everyone. And they sort of like dismantle their beds to make like get like some of the metal bars for weapons, and they say that okay, like the first 50 floors get to eat every day, so they're getting nothing today. They can eat tomorrow, but the idea is that everyone below floor 50 is going to get to eat, and they're going down the platform to platform, and they're doing this, and we see them have to fight off some people, and in whatever, and they get to this old man who, this old guy in a wheelchair who basically says there has to be a message. So when the platform, because this is the other thing we see earlier on, is that at the end of the day, when it's been to every floor, the platform like zooms back up. It goes back up really quickly to the top, and he says like there has to be a message. So make sure there's one dish left, like one thing left that no one's eaten. So when it goes back to the top and they see that something was left, it'll be a message to say, hey, we did this. We were able to achieve this. And so they pick one of the dishes, and I can't remember. But it's actually one of the few times it cuts to something else. Is before this part of the movie, we see like the manager, whoever upstairs, like grill the kitchen staff because there's like a hair on it, and we see him like take the hair off, and it's kind of this thing. But it's this dish, this dessert dish, that they're going to protect no matter what, because that's the message. Like they can send this back up. That's the message.
Yeah.
And ultimately, they have a really hard time. They get beat. They get stabbed at one point. Because what I really like about this last chunk of the movie is that it really gives it like this kind of like hopeful mission. Like, okay, now they're being like proactive instead of reactive, and they've come up with a plan. It's kind of like, this is maybe the one thing that makes it feel like a horror movie to me, in terms of like structure, is that in a lot of horror movies, like you have characters who are getting killed and stalked and maimed and whatever like 2/3 of the movie, but there's a moment where the character decides to have maybe form a plan to fight back. We see it in Nightmare on Elm Street, we see it in other things. I kind of feel like this was that, but in a more hopeful level, where it felt more like, no, let's prove that we can be better than this, and them trying to pull this off to prove that that it doesn't have to be this. It was it's like potentially inspiring in a movie that was so bleak that you really wanted to believe in them, because please give them some sort of happy ending to this.
Yeah.
So I really like that concept of it.
And I think it's interesting, like too, there's like a lot of allegories and stuff you can kind of make from this, where all they want is like this peaceful message, but they have to go to like extreme bouts of violence to get it.
Yeah, they have to fight people off in really violent ways, and to the point where at least one guy gets like just brutally murdered. Like this guy sort of like reams for the food, and Goring just whacks him in the back of the head with a metal pole, and it looks like a kill. It looks like he's just killed him. And
it's like a little bit of a montage where like it almost seems like an action movie for a second. Like I feel like when they're just doing like all these quick cuts to like all the times that they've had to like hit people in the head with these like metal pipes. It's like it's kind of funny in like a very dark kind of way.
Yeah, there's definitely something there to that. You're right about how they have to use kind of force to like bring in the peaceful future. You don't just get it for free. You have to actually fight for it.
Yeah.
So there's an interesting element there. So there's a lot of like human like faults and condition and the script that's kind of poking at the real world. But they get to like, so basically he thinks there's 250 floors, because when he was on floor 202, he sort of counted like how many times it stopped because he could hear it before it came back up. But once they start getting really low in the numbers, when they get to like over 200, like they stop stopping essentially on some of the floors, because if the people on the floors are dead, the platform doesn't stop, and they have this like awkward realization, like, oh shit, there's more than 250 floors, because all these really low floors, a lot of the people aren't alive anymore, so they just don't get stopped at. And they eventually stop it, and this is the interesting thing, is they stop at like 333, which I think was intentional, because like there's two people in every floor, which is 666.
Right. Yeah.
And then you have the whole idea of Dante's Inferno and the layers of hell. There's there's some referencing there that I think is very intentional.
Yeah.
But they stop in 333, which is obviously ridiculously low, and at this point you're like, okay, no building on Earth has ever come close to having 333 floors. So where exactly is this? So, it really starts to feel more science fictiony with that number. But they find the child, this little girl, who is clearly the daughter of Miharu, right? And Miharu at this point is actually dead, because they pass her by at one point. She's just sort of dead in one of the platforms. and it's kind of sad, and it's like, oh dear. And they find this girl, and like she's really hungry, obviously. And what I think is interesting here is that the platform stopped in this floor. Like it knew, like whoever's running this place knew she was there.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't like she's kind of this anomaly who's not supposed to exist, even though the rules seem to be different because, like, they actually don't get back on the platform because they sort of come off it to talk to her and try and, like, help her, and the platform goes down and they don't get back in time, and they've got this dish, this dessert that they've been saving is the message, and like, oh, the girl's hungry, give her some, and they let her eat it. But one of the things they notice is that this room doesn't heat up or cool down because they've kept some food for her. So it seems like whoever's in charge here knows that she's there because the platform did stop, but it also, like, didn't punish them for keeping food here for her. So, like, can't they just come in and get her because they know there's a child there that's not supposed to be there? It raises a lot of questions as to exactly, like, is this intentional? Like, do they want the child to be there for the sake of, like, them, like, the social experiment in terms of what they're doing? Like, is this a very intentional plan? But they let the kid eat the dessert, and they say that, okay, the kid's actually a better message. If we can send the kid back up, then the kid's this hopeful message of the future. Like, okay, this kid was able to survive at floor 333 because we were able to, like, get her some food. We were able to, like, go through all those floors and make sure someone at the very bottom got something to eat. And it's a really inspiring little thing. But unfortunately, Baharat dies here. He bleeds out from his wound from one of the previous floors, and at this point, I mean, even Goring's not exactly in the best of shape. He's kind of crawling around. He's in pain, but he goes onto the platform with the girl. When it comes down the next day, and they go down into the bottom of wherever this is, and it's just this dark kind of infinite pit. With one beam of light coming down from where the hole is, and he gets off and he sees, and he's ahead at least, the ghost or whatever of the old man who says this is the end of his journey. The girl's the message, not you. It can't be you. You can't live in the hopeful society that you helped. You've essentially done all these violent acts. You've done all these things to try and prove that we can have a better tomorrow, that we can have a better society, but you don't get to live in that. And bizarrely, it actually reminded me of a speech from Serenity, of all things. There's a speech from the villain in that movie, the operative, who says that he's trying to build a better world, but he's not going to get to live in it. It's not for him. He's someone who had to be this violent, soldier for the Alliance to create this better world that he's trying to fight for. But he has no place in it because in order to achieve what he's doing, he had to be a nastier person. He had to be someone who was willing to do all these bad things. And it kind of reminded me of this idea that, like, you don't really get to be part of this better world because you had to become this to achieve it, if this is indeed what it's going to do. So the movie ends in this really kind of, like, quiet, sort of bittersweet moment where he's walking off into the darkness with the old man, who obviously doesn't really exist. And we just end in this final shot of the girl rising up on the platform, really quickly, and that's the last shot of the movie, and it cuts the credits. I've been explaining how this movie ends for the last, like, 5 minutes. Tim, say something.
Yeah, that was interesting. Like, I mean, especially once they get, to this bottom level, and you're starting to get, like, the kind of 666 nod, and I don't know. At this point, I was kind of wondering, like, all right, how much of this is real? Like, could this possibly be, like, some type of death afterlife thing? Like, is he in hell? Is this last little bit like him dying and having, like, some type of death dream? I'm not sure exactly. It's it's hard to tell. But I mean, I think it's definitely interesting. I do keep thinking, though, like, that thing the platform is going up so fast. I'm like, well, I hope, like, there's some way to, give it a nice smooth landing once it gets to the top. So it's not just like the kid crashing into the ceiling, but
Yes, that's a
I don't
very good point.
know.
I imagine there is like a sort of soft entrance at the top, just because otherwise all the cutlery and stuff that's on the
That's true.
platform would just go flying every time it comes up.
Yeah.
So that's my guess. If anything, it's probably unrealistic that all that stays on it as it's going up anyway. But
Right. Yeah.
whatever. No, I like a lot about the ending actually, despite the fact that it goes for this sort of vague, kind of ambiguous element to it. I think what I was saying there about the idea of him becoming this kind of like darker person to achieve this, but I also like the idea that if we are going to change things, it's going to take this much effort, it's going to take this much determination, and the whole idea of the girl at the bottom who we got to save because we went through all that effort was to sort of prove that it's worth it. This innocent person gets to live and survive and gets the treatment that she deserves because we tried hard enough to give it to her. It's just, it's a very hopeful. This is kind of what I was saying earlier about how the ending is actually got a very uplifting kind of. Even though like Goring seems to be like you say, kind of walking into death, literally or otherwise. There's kind of a hopeful bent to the ending. It's like no, like but he gave this girl a chance, and maybe that was worth the effort. That was worth the.
Yeah, it's like eventually you do have to make sacrifices for the future generation. Like like you can't just keep taking it. I mean, you could probably look at kind of having like an environmental message or something, like where it's like yeah, we can't just keep taking and taking and taking from the earth. Eventually, if we're gonna want to make it like livable for our kids and our grandkids and stuff, like eventually you're gonna have to make a sacrifice. So yeah, I do like that it is like as dark as it gets at points, it is kind of like a strangely happy or uplifting ending.
Yeah. And I think it's because they don't play it like he's like upset as he's dying. It's a really sad moment.
Yeah.
It kind of plays like he accepts what his role was, and he knows that his role is done. So this is definitely a movie where, because of how kind of like how it ends and how it doesn't really build up a lot of context for the world outside, it feels more like a movie that is just kind of an allegory in and of itself, rather than a movie that's supposed to exist in a real world of any kind. Which is why I say I compare it to like an episode of the Twilight Zone, where it doesn't necessarily have to function in a real world. We don't have to necessarily take this as like, it's part of the real world somewhere, and this is how it works. Like, I think once you get to the point where there's like 333 floors, it's like, okay, all right.
And my wife was like reading some stuff about this afterwards, because usually if like she has questions over a movie, like she wants to like she'll like to do like a little research. Like I'm usually too lazy, I'm just like whatever. But I guess she was like looking at some stuff with the director, who was saying that like his kind of idea for the movie is that like it's supposed to represent like different ideologies. Like obviously capitalism is a pretty obvious one there, but I think he said the main character was supposed to represent like socialism, I think, and kind of how it doesn't like and I'm not saying I agree with this, but I think this was what the director was trying to say about how in theory it sounds good, but when he tries to put it in practice, it doesn't go well. And then and I think he had other examples, but what I like about these kind of movies though is like, even if that's what the if even if the director has a very specific like meaning or take behind it, I think there's enough ambiguity in it that a lot of people can take different stuff away from it. Like that I feel like there's a lot of different kind of metaphors or allegories you can kind of make, or real life things you can kind of point towards us that you kind of get from it.
Yeah, and I think even if he did have a specific idea for what the main character represents, I think it's worth mentioning, even if he thinks that wouldn't work, it still treats it like, by the end of the film, like I don't think the director in any way, shape, or form is saying that we shouldn't try something, because it still very much plays like, no, it was worth trying, even if he's like, okay, maybe this specific ideology isn't the answer, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we just give up and let things continue to exist the way they are.
Totally, yeah.
So even if you disagree with that part of what the director had in his head with the message, at least Like I think the movie's actually quite open to sort of like interpretation in that sense.
Totally, yeah.
No, no, I dug it quite a bit. I think it works kind of as a suspenseful, horror action. I mean, action's kind of a weird word, but it does kind of get action at a couple of points towards the end.
Yeah.
But like a horror sci-fi political commentary or social commentary, I think it works really well when you sort of read into it and think about the themes and think about what the characters represent and the core ideas that it's doing. And it never betrays those ideas. It always kind of sticks to them, adds more layers to them, and its final sort of statement is very much about those ideas. But it's also just a really fun movie in the context of the premise and like they try to survive and all the rest of it. But yeah, I think it's a really solid movie from a director who had a vision and a tight script and saw it through to the end. Like there's definitely maybe other movies that tackle some of these things better, but I've had a hard time really faulting the movie that much as in and of itself, because I think it's actually a really solid movie through and through. One of the better newer movies we've seen recently, I think.
Oh yeah, totally. And I feel like, how many times have we seen a trailer that has like a really cool or interesting sounding concept and then the execution just isn't there. I feel like this is something where it has a very solid idea, and I don't know if it necessarily went where I was expecting it to, but I feel like it does fully deliver on what I was hoping for. And yeah, and it does it while being interesting all the way throughout. It makes you care and like the characters. Are you laughing at me? Was that noise?
No, that was my chair squeaking.
I thought you were like stifling a laugh, like you idiot.
It didn't even sound like a laugh. I was being paranoid.
It's hard. I can't see you. I don't know what you're doing. You could be making the jack off motion with your hands or something. I don't know.
I'm simply just sitting here being pretty, Tim. Deal with it.
Okay. But no, like I think it is a very interesting and entertaining flick, or film, as some people might call it.
Uh-huh. Continue.
No, that's it. I once he distracted me, I lost my concentration of thought.
All right. What do you mean I distracted you? I moved. I just moved. All right. Anyway, so I think in terms of the ideologies or what characters represent, I think Imagery, the woman with cancer who worked for the administration and then clearly didn't know exactly what this world was that she was stepping into, despite the fact that she thought she did. I think she represents kind of your idealist who's up in the ivory tower who likes to talk about a lot of things but doesn't actually understand how anything works.
Oh sure, yeah, like that kind of feels like a lot of people that are in positions of power, like you always see like some politician or like rich person will say like, oh, why don't people simply do this, and then they have no idea what it's actually like to live that.
Yeah, what's rent these days? Like $10? Oh.
Yeah, like what did what's that that famous thing or whatever where they had like some politician was talking about like, oh, like how much does a banana cost, like $10 or something like that. Like
I'm pretty sure you're thinking of the Arrested Development joke. I mean, unless that was based on a real thing, but yeah.
I thought it was, but yeah, I could be wrong. Maybe it is just Arrested Development.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, so I mean that's the movie. I think it's really solid and really dependable. It's one of the better things, Netflix acquired movies. Certainly.
Sure.
I don't think they made it. I think they just acquired it, but
yeah,
it's it's a Netflix movie for all intents and purposes now, and one of the better things they've got on there. So. I would highly recommend checking it out if you haven't, especially, I mean, if you have listened to us talk about it full spoilers, then, that's on you, but still give it a try, because it was good. It kept my attention the whole time, and it is very tight, it's like 95 minutes. It's not a long movie by any means, and, it fulfills everything it kind of sets out to do, I think. And I think importantly as well, the character's likable. He gets to a dark place, but he's never stopped empathizing with him, I don't think.
Right.
So no, very good. So, what are you gonna give the movie, Timmy? Out of 10?
I think I'm gonna give it a 7.5 for now. I don't know. It might be one if I think about it more. I did like it. I could possibly go up, but I think for at least now I'm gonna stick with 7.5.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go a little bit higher than that. I think I'm gonna go with the 8.5. I think I was impressed. It kept my attention the entire time. I thought it was engaging. I thought the characters were interesting. It's definitely a movie. It's an allegory the entire time. It's very in your face with that, but I thought it always worked in that context, and it always kept changing things up. And I have little to complain about, so I find it hard to go any lower than that. And it's even one that maybe could rise in time. Hashtag better than Snowpiercer. That's it. So,
Wow.
are you a Snowpiercer fan? I can't remember.
I only saw it once, but I remember liking it the one time I saw it.
It's okay. Like, there's some good moments there. It takes itself way too seriously, though. I thought, which this kind of does too, but there's still some moments of humor in this, bizarrely. So I don't know. This one worked better for me. Anyway, I guess it's because in Snowpiercer, someone breaks down and admits they ate a baby once. This movie actually shows me people eating people, and it's like, okay, right, I buy it. I buy their state of mind right now. Anyway. So there you go. That is The Platform. It is very good, so you should check it out. We give it a seal of approval. And this will count as a 2020 movie. In fact, would it? Oh no, it was out in Spain in 2019. Well, you know what? No, we'll still count it as 2020 for our purposes of, because it became available to most of the planet in 2020. We'll count it when we get to our best of at the end of the year. I say end of the year. It'll be like March next year, but whatever.
I mean, we're gonna need as much as we can if no other movies get released this year.
This is true. This is very true. And I'd rather sort of vouch for a movie like this than put on something that's only mediocre to fill out the 10. Just to
I guess technically The Grudge has to be on there because.
Oh, don't know. No. If we don't get 10 better movies this year than The Grudge, then we're in a really bad place.
We'd be on a level 248 or something.
Oh yeah, imagine this was. Oh, we could do a parody of this, Tim, where instead of food, it's a platform. It's just a set of Blu-rays, and each floor gets to take one Blu-ray each, and then by the time it gets down to us, it's like, oh look, it's The Grudge 2020. It's Twilight or something. There's just the absolute garbage that are left.
Maybe we'll do a live stream at some point. We'll just have a big list, and then we can hand them out to Patreons or patrons or something, depending on their level.
That's pretty funny, actually. That's pretty funny. Yeah, the highest patrons get all the best picks, and then it goes down to the bottom. That's pretty funny. Anyway, so that is us. That is with Screws After Midnight. Talk about The Platform. Let us know what you think of the movie in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. Or actually, more specifically, at Screams Midnight for the Screams After Midnight specific Twitter. Sometimes it's me commenting on that. Sometimes it's Tim that's posting from there, and you get some wacky stuff. We mentioned Patreon earlier, of course. Patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. So go and have a look at that. You can, of course, rate the podcast and give us 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts. That helps out a lot as well, as does liking, subscribing, all the usual stuff on YouTube. All these things do help and keep the content coming and help us find more people, and so on and so on and so on. So that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching scary movies, guys, and we will see you next time.